Hi, good morning everyone. Alan here. How's everybody doing this morning? Let me see, we have 34 coders joined so far. That's brilliant. Welcome everyone. I can see some people are going ahead and doing the steps. That's fine. If you want to go ahead and start working on the project, that's no problem. You can work away. Otherwise, if you want to wait and come along with me, I'll be going through the steps. So if this is your first time joining one of our code alongs, I'll just give you a quick idea of how it works. So at the moment you should be seeing me here in this little YouTube box, and the way it works is I will demonstrate a step. So when I'm demonstrating a step, showing you the code of that step, if you want to click into full screen so you get a good clear picture of the code that I'm creating and you can see what I'm doing. And then once I'm finished showing you the step, if you want to come out of that, switch across to, you'll have two tabs open. One for the instructions and one for creating the code. You'll switch across to the tab to create the code and then come back and go into full screen again. So that's generally how it works. We had a code along this morning for 6 to 9 year olds. Had a couple of technical issues during that. The broadcast dropped and my mic wasn't working for a little bit. So just to let you know, if the broadcast drops again this morning, just give it a minute and just refresh the page and I'll hopefully get it back up and running. Hopefully there won't be any problems, but if it does happen, that's the best thing to do, is just to refresh the instructions page here and hopefully the broadcast will come back up. Okay, so I think we're only 1 minute past, so I'll just give it another minute before we get going. So I'll give you a quick demonstration of what we're going to be making today. So we're going to be making an arcade project. So it's just a platformer game. What a platformer is you just work your way along a map basically from the start to the finish. So it's quite a simple map. But all we want to do today is just kind of learn about platformers and how you make one. And then once you have the skills on how to make a basic one, then you can start, making a more complicated map and adding in all your own extra ideas. So I've just created a little happy sprite here, and I can control him left and right using my arrow keys on my keyboard. And if I want to make him jump, I can press up and he jumps. So basically, the goal of the game, or the idea of the game, is to get to the end and there's a kind of jewel I need to touch into without falling into the lava. So if I go along and I jump through the map without touching the lava, falling into the lava. So it's quite a simple map, and I get to the end, and then once I touch into here, we can make it go on to a second level, and so on. So this level would be little bit more complicated. And if I was to touch into the lava, it would be game over. So that's what we're going to make today. The maps themselves will be quite basic, but that's okay. As I said, we just want to learn how to make them, and then you can take your time, making a more elaborate or more detailed map. So I'm going to close down my tab there. Okay. So we've 41 people. Brilliant. So let's get going. Let's see, we're 3 minutes past. Oh, just to say before we go, so as usual, all our logged in coders will get 250 extra points when you complete the project, and we'll also give away a microbit to one of the coders, one of our logged in coders. So microbits, if you don't know what they are, the little microcomputers that have loads of different sensors in them that you can program. They have LEDs, buttons, compass, accelerometer, thermometer. They have a microphone, they have a speaker. They're really cool, and you can do lots of different projects with them. So we'll give one of those away at the end to a coder. Okay, so what are we up to? We're 42 coders, so we'll get going. Okay, so step number 1 is just an introduction. So just talking about what a platformer is. So they're called platform games or jump and run games. And basically the idea is, you start somewhere on a map and you work your way through it, and then you get to the goal at the end. You can put different kind of dangers or things that might, either kill you or take a life or take your health, throughout the map, just to make it a little bit more complicated and kind of add to the gameplay. So that's what we're going to be creating today. So I'll just mark that as done. Okay, so the very first step is to create a new project on the Arcade website. So in step number 2, if you want to click on the link arcade.makecode.com, it's just going to open up the Arcade website, and then if you click on the orange new button project, it'll ask you what you want to call it. So call your project whatever you want to call it. I'm calling mine Platformer, and it'll open up the project editor. So if you want to go ahead and do that first step and then come back and mark the step as done, so I can kind of see the progress of everyone. As you're doing that, so just to give people, if you haven't used Arcade before, it's a block-based program language, so we can give instructions using our blocks. So we have a kind of toolbox here in the middle, and in here we can drag and drop whatever blocks we need into the code area here. And that's how we create our code, create our instructions. And then our code plays out here in the little simulator game, handheld gamepad here. That's where our code plays out. So that's where we'll see our game being created. And then if you want to delete any of your codes, you just drop them back into the toolbox. Drop them into the toolbox here. Okay, so let me see. So we've 25 coders have completed that step. Okay, so that's pretty easy. And just to say, as I'm working through the project, if I go a little bit too fast for you, that's no problem. Just take your time. We leave our projects, our code along projects up on our website. They'll stay up there so you can complete them in your own time. And we'll even put in the video once we're finished. We put the video of the code along back up here. And if you ever want to subscribe to our videos, just click on subscribe here and that'll bring you to our YouTube page. Okay, I'm actually going to close my video so I have a little bit more space. Okay, so we've created our project. So the next step is we're going to create a sprite. So our sprite is the character that we're going to use to control and go through our platform map. So all we're going to do is in the make code, we're going to, zoom in here. We're going to go into the sprites toolbox and we're going to get the very first block here. It says set my sprite to sprite of kind player. We're going to drag that and we're going to put it inside the on start. And then we want to design our character. So if you click on the little gray box here, it'll open up the editor. So let me zoom out. It'll open up the editor, and using the tools here, you can just create a simple sprite, or a simple character. So if you just want to do something quite basic for the moment, there's no need to get very elaborate in creating your character just at the moment, because all we're doing is we just want to learn how to do this. And then once we know how to do it, we can go back in and we can kind of add in extra touches and so on. So if you want to go ahead and do that step, so you're going to go into the sprites toolbox, and you're going to drag in a set my sprite to sprite of kind player. So what that does is it creates an object called a sprite, and it stores it in the variable called my sprite, and then we can interact and use that variable in other parts of the code. So once you've dragged it in, click on the little gray box, and using the editor, create just a basic sprite, just, put a face or do a little man or a girl or, a boy or a woman, whatever you want to put in, and design it, and then come back and mark the step as done if you're logged in. Okay, so I can see 14 coders have completed that step. So while I'm just giving you some time to complete that, I'll call out some of the coders that we have joining us today. So we've coder 1234, Erica ZH, Code Ninja is myself, Minecraft H, Giyoshi, Landlord 656, Coder 55, Jimbo 1920 Pro, Star Behan, Flower 123, Carol 2000, A Murphy, Mr. Krabby Patty, Coding Club, Adam B, Carol 2000, I call you out, Vinia, Albertro 1, Danny Mac, Luna, Tara, MJ 1234, Richard, Maraid, called you out already. J Space, Isabel B, Ruby Red. So hopefully I got everyone. If I see new people join, I'll try and call you out as I see you. Okay, so what are we up to? We have 16 coders have completed that step, 17. So I'll give a little bit more time. Just remember, don't get too complicated. We only have the hour to do this lesson. And the goal of the lesson is to learn how to do it. And then you can take those skills. Once you've learned those skills, you can take those and then you can use them again and spend a bit more time, designing your sprite character, designing a really cool map that's, really hard to get through or really challenging. So take your time. So don't spend too much time on designing them right now. Okay. So let me see, how many steps have we got? We have 11 steps. The 12th step is to send it to an arcade computer if you have the handheld device itself. Okay, so let's move on to step number 4. So in step number 4, we're going to program our sprite to move left and right when we press the left and right arrows on our keyboard or using the simulator, and it'll control it left and right. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to add in a move my sprite with buttons block, and we're going to just set it that we can move Vx, which is the velocity on the x-axis. The x-axis is left and right, y-axis is up and down. So we just want to do left and right, so we're just going to set the velocity for the Vx, and that's for the x, the velocity x. So if you want to go into full screen, I'll show you how. So into Scratch, you're going to go into the controller toolbox, and then the very first block in here is move my sprite with buttons. I'm going to drag that in and put it inside my onStart underneath set my sprite. And I'm going to click on the plus so that it expands and shows me the Vx and Vy values. So at the moment, so you'll see here, if I move up and down, it will move it, and left and right. But we don't want to use the up and down, because in a platformer game, you have gravity, making you go along the bottom. So like, you shouldn't just be able to press up to move through space. So we don't want to set a Vy value. And if we put this to 0, as I do here, now in my simulator, when I press up, it doesn't do anything, or down, it doesn't, only when I go left and right. So if you want to add in that code now, you're going to go into the controller toolbox and get a move my sprite with buttons. If you click on the little plus in that block, it'll expand it out. And if you want to change the Vy number to 0, because we do not want to be able to move up and down using the up and down arrows. Okay, so see how everyone is doing. So 16 coders so far have completed that step. So I'll just give a little bit more time for people to do it. So the next step that we're going to add, and I'll give a little bit more time for you to finish step 4. But step number 5, just to give you a kind of preview, what we're going to do is we're going to add in gravity. So when you go up, if you jump, gravity will pull you back down to the bottom of the platform. And that's essentially what a platformer is. It's a person, or not even a person, it's a character moving through the map, navigating their way through it, jumping up and jumping down. I guess some of the most famous ones would be, Super Mario. Okay, so we're up to 22 coders have completed step number 4. Again, if I'm going too fast for you, it's no problem. Take your time. We leave up the project. The project will stay up on our website, so you've all the time you want to complete it. And we'll even put the video up the top left here once we finish, so you can always come back and play it back. Okay, so moving on to step number 5. And this is where we're going to add in some gravity to our sprite. So we can see in the little preview here that our sprite starts in the middle, and that's where it kind of spawns. That's where it starts at the start of the game, and then gravity kicks in and it falls down. Now we don't have any platform. We haven't drawn our map yet, so it just kind of goes off the screen. But that's okay. We're just programming the gravity for the moment. So what we're going to do is, you'll remember in the previous step, we set the VY for the button, so the velocity Y and the Y axis, which is up and down, we set that to 0. But now what we're going to do is forever, let me zoom in, forever, we're going to set the velocity, the VY, the Y velocity for my sprite, so my sprite is the character, to 50, which is going to pull it down, constantly pull it down. And what I mean constantly is because we put it in a forever block. So that code is just going to forever keep on running. It's going to keep on running, setting the velocity to 50, the Y velocity, which pulls it down. Okay, so if I go into Scratch here, I'm going to go into the sprites toolbox, and I'm going to get this set. Where is it? It's the set my sprite velocity. So set my sprite, and I'm going to put that in. Sorry, first of all, I need to go in and get a forever block in the loops. So if I go into the green loops toolbox, I get a forever block, and then I go into the sprites toolbox and get a set my sprite X to 0, but instead of X, I click on the little white arrow, and we're going to choose velocity Y. And then we're going to, instead of 0, we'll put in 50 in there. And that means in my simulator, if I refresh it, it'll just start pulling down your sprite. The velocity will act on it forever, because it's in the forever block. Okay, so if you want to go ahead and do that step, so you're going to go into the loops toolbox, and you're going to get a forever block, and drag that in, and that doesn't connect to anything, that can just go on its own. And then you're going to go into the sprites toolbox, so the very top one, and you're going to get a set my sprite X to 0 and put that inside the forever block. And then if you click on the little white arrow of that block, instead of X, you can change it to VY, velocity Y. And then finally, instead of 0 in the block, you want to change that to 50, so that it pulls down your character. Forever, it pulls it down. So that's how we program gravity. Okay, so how are we doing? We have 17 coders have completed that step. So I'll give a little bit more time. While we're given more time, I'll just kind of preview the next step that we're going to be doing. So the next step, we're actually going to draw the map. So we're actually going to draw the map. And like, you can have different maps for different levels. In this project, we'll probably just do one level, just do one map. But if we do have time at the end, I'll show you how to program a second map and then move on to that. So what are we up to? We're up to 20 coders have completed step number, 21 coders have completed step number 5 to add the gravity. I'm getting some green thumbs up. So we'll move on then to step number 6. And again, if I'm going a little bit too fast, that's okay. Just take your time, keep using the instructions and just work your way through them. Okay, so step number 6, we're going to draw the map. So we're going to actually add in two new blocks here. We're going to get the camera to follow the sprite. So that what that means is, as your sprite is moving, if it moves off the kind of screen area, at the moment it'll just move off. But if we use this, the camera follow sprite block, your camera will follow wherever your sprite goes, and it'll keep it in the screen, in the picture. And then we're also going to add in a set tile map 2 block, and this is the block where we'll draw our map. Okay, so if you want to go into full screen, I'll show you how to do this. So into arcade, I'm going to go into, is it scene? Sorry, yeah, scene. and I'm going to get the camera follow. I think it's down the bottom, is it? Yes, so that it's, let me zoom out a bit. It's the second last block in the scene toolbox, camera follow sprite, my sprite. I'm going to put that inside the on start, move that out of the way. And then I'm going to go back into the scene toolbox and I'm going to get a set tile map 2 block. So that's in the tiles section of the scene toolbox. Set tile map 2, and we're going to put that inside the on start. Now here's where we're going to design our map. So I'm going to click on the little grey box, and that's going to open up the tile editor. Now at the moment I've got a square box, a square map. And what I actually want is a long rectangular map. So instead of a square map, I want a long rectangular map. So we can start at one side and work our way through it to the end. So down the very bottom right, you'll see it says 16 by 16. So these are the dimensions of our tile map. The first number is the width, and then the second number is the height. And because they're about the same, we just have a square at the moment. So we're going to change these to 32 in the first one, 32 width by 8 height. And as you can see, it's changed it to a rectangle. And then what we want to do is draw our map. So there's going to be a few different elements in our map. There's going to be the blocks that we can go on. And we're going to set those to walls, and I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. And then we're going to have the lava as well. So we kind of have to think about it. We'll have a start, and then we'll have an end as well. And we'll put in the kind of a dual tile as the kind of goal. So I'm just going to choose this kind of green grass here as the tiles to draw. I'm going to draw a few at the start. Then I'm going to draw a platform that I have to jump up on, maybe put in a gap, jump up again, might put in a couple just on their own, and then get rid of my head, a platform at the end. So the idea will be I'll start here, I'll need to jump up onto this one, jump across to this one, jump to this, onto here, here, and here. Okay. So I just really chose any tile there from the forest one. There's different categories of ones. I think in the miscellaneous, if I scroll through them, there's lava ones. Now you can choose whatever one you want, but choose a tile that will be the tile that if you touch it, you die. So I'm just going to choose lava, and I'm simply just going to draw it all the way along the bottom here. So if I fall into the lava, it'll be game over. And then I want to choose some sort of tile for the end that I need to get to. I think there's, in dungeon, there's kind of dual tiles. So I'm going to choose this one here, and I'm going to put that right at the end here. So this is my goal. This is where I want to get to. So jump, 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 and get to here. And if I get to here, it can be, you've completed the game, well done, or, you can move on to the next level. Okay, so there's a fair amount of instructions there, so I'll give a good bit of time for people to do that. So if you want to go ahead and add in those 2 blocks. So the first one is in the scene toolbox, and it's camera follow sprite, my sprite, and that goes in the on start. And then again in the scene toolbox, you want to get the set tile map 2 block, and that has a grey square, and you put that inside the on start. And then click on the grey square, and that will open up the editor. That will open up the editor, the map editor. And what you want to do is change the dimensions to 32 by 8. So then the very bottom left, there's numbers. It should say 16 and 16. Change the first one to 32, so that's the width. And then change the second one to 8, and that's the height. And then once you have that done, choose a tile from the gallery that you want to use as your kind of ground tile. So again, you don't need to get too elaborate. You don't need to get too complicated for the moment. We just want to learn how to do this. So do a simple enough map with a few different platforms from the start to the end. It's always important to put some ground at the start, so when your character spawns and drops down, they're dropping down into a safe place. So draw your ground, then choose some sort of danger tile. I chose in the miscellaneous, I chose the lava one. So there's different ones in there, and I drew that along the bottom. So, have it along the bottom so that if you fall through the gaps, that's where, it'll be game over. And then finally, choose a jewel tile or some sort of tile as your goal. It doesn't have to be a jewel. I chose in the dungeon. There's a kind of jewel tile there, a kind of orange one. There's a green one too. There's chests and things like that. Put that at the end. Let me get rid of my face. Put that at the end as your kind of goal to get to. And once you have all that done, come back and mark the step as done. Oh, I'm after just remembering there's one more step we need, or one more thing we need to do in this step, and that's we need to set our ground tiles as walls. So I'll just wait to see how everyone's getting along with step number 6, and then I'll demonstrate that, because I do want to show you how to do that. Do this part because this is quite important, because at the moment my character will just fall through the ground tiles because it doesn't know that they're wall tiles yet, because I haven't set them to wall tiles. And what a wall tile means is the character can't go through it. So the character will land on it and stay on top of it. So let me just wait for my stats to update. Okay, so 24 completed step number 5. I'm just waiting for step number 6 to come through. Hasn't come through yet. Okay, I'll just wait for that. So this is an important part. So if everyone can come back to the instructions tab, and if you go on full screen for the video, I'll show you what I mean by setting them as wall tiles if you don't already know. So hopefully everyone has seen full screen now. So you'll see here that my character, my sprite, just falls through the ground, and we don't want that to happen. We want them to be able to stay on top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my tile editor again, my tile map, and I'm going to choose this tool here. It's draw walls. It's a kind of 3D block. And I want to click on that to select it. And then what that means is I can select anywhere in my map to act as a wall. So I want to choose all my ground tiles. I'm just kind of coloring these in using the draw walls tool. So each of my ground tiles I'm setting as a wall. That is a very important step, because otherwise your character will just fall through the ground. We want the character to stay on the ground. So make sure you do that step to draw the walls. So you'll see, if you're still watching me now, you'll see my character just lands on top of the ground now. So make sure you do that step as well. Okay, so I'm seeing some people have completed step number 6. Some people are moving ahead. That's no problem. Work at your own pace. Okay, I'm going to actually refresh my page just to see if I can make the stats kick in, just so I can see how many people are working through. Okay, so we have 22 coders have completed step number 6. So well done, everyone. Keep going. So if you haven't done that, if you're not up to step number 6 yet, that's no problem. Just keep on going at your own pace and you'll get there. Okay, so that is step number 6. So we're going to move on now to step number 7. And this is where we're going to program our character to jump. So to do that, what we're actually going to do is we're going to suspend gravity, or we're going to change the velocity y of our character. So when we press the up arrow, we're going to make our character go up. And the way that we're going to do that is, if I zoom in here, we're going to use an on button jump on up button press block. And we're going to create a variable called jump. And we're going to set that to true. And then we're going to pause for 750 milliseconds. So that's 3/4 of a second. And then we're going to set it to false. And then we're going to go to our forever block. So we had, inside here, we had set my sprite velocity y to 50. And what we're going to do is we're going to put in an if then, and we're going to check if jump is true, then we'll set the velocity y of our sprite to -50. That'll make our sprite go up. And that'll only happen for 750 milliseconds because jump will only be true for 750 milliseconds. Then it'll be set back to false, which will mean it'll kick it back into normal gravity. So Vy will go back to 50. So I'll show you how to do that now in Arcade, in the editor. So what I'm going to do, first of all, is going to go into the variables toolbox and click on make a variable and call it jump, J-U-M-P. And that will create a jump block and create a jump variable. And let me just check my code again. So yeah, we're going to get an on button pressed. So in controller, the second block there, it says on a button pressed, and drag that in. Let me move this to the side and this back up. So we'll change it to up. So on up button pressed. So you can see you can program all the different buttons on the gamepad, but we're going to do the up button, and we're going to go to the variables toolbox and we're going to set jump to 0. But instead of 0, we want to set that to true. So we'll go into the logic toolbox, and down the bottom there is a true block, and we're going to drag that into the set jump block. So set jump to true, and we can duplicate that. So right click and duplicate, or you can drag them in again, and this time set it to false. And then we just want to put a little pause in there. So I think we go into the loops, the loops green toolbox, and we'll get a pause 100 milliseconds, put it in the middle, and change that to 750. So on up button pressed, set jump to true, pause 3/4 of a second, and then set jump to false. And then I'll move this down and drag in my forever. So I'll take out my sprite velocity y for the moment, and I'm going to go into logic and get an if then else block, and I can put my velocity back in. I'll duplicate it because I want a second one. So what we want to say is go into logic and get an equals to, 0 equals 0. So what we want to do is we want to say if, into variables, if jump equals, go into logic again, get a true block. So if jump equals true, we want to set the velocity y to -50. Else it gets set to 50, which is what we had it already. And I'll just demonstrate this working now. So if I hit my up arrow, you see my character jumps up for 3/4 of a second and then is pulled back down using gravity. So there was a fair few blocks we added there. I'll leave them up on the screen there for a second, and I'll talk through them. So if you want to go ahead and do them now. So I'll talk through it again. So you're going to go into your Arcade, your project editor, and you're going to go into the variables toolbox and then click on make a variable. And then type in jump, J-U-M-P, and click on OK. So that creates your variable called jump. And if you remember from our previous code alongs, a variable is something that stores a value or an object. So we can store text, numbers, sprites, we can store different things in variables. This one we're just going to store true or false. So then after that, go into the controller toolbox and get on A button pressed and drag that in and click on the little white arrow beside A and change it to up. So it's on up button pressed. Then you're going back into the variables toolbox and get a set jump to 0 block and put that inside the on button pressed. And then into the logic toolbox, and right down the bottom there's a true block, and you drag that in and put it in inside the set jump to block instead of the 0. So now the block says set jump to true. You can right click on that set jump to true block and duplicate it, create a copy, and in the copy set it to false. And then we just want to put a pause in the middle of those. So into the loops toolbox and get a pause 100 milliseconds and drag it in the middle of them and change it to 750 milliseconds, so 3/4 of a second. And then you're going to get your forever block that had the set my sprite VY to 50 inside it. You can drag out, you can pull out the set VY to 50 and then go into the logic toolbox and get an if then else block, kind of looks like an E, and drag that and put it inside the forever block. And then you can drag your set my sprite VY 50 back and put it after the else in the gap. You can duplicate that block, the set my sprite VY to 50, and put the copy, the duplication, inside underneath the if, so in the gap of the if, and then you change that to -50 instead of 50. And then, so in the if block, the if then block, what we want to check is if jump is true or not. So we need to go into the logic toolbox and there's a 0 equals 0 block. And that you'll notice that that shape kind of fits into the little shape in between if and then. So if you drag it in there, and then we want to change it. So go into the variables toolbox and get a jump block and put it inside instead of the first 0. And then back into the logic toolbox and get another true block and put it for the second 0. So it should say if jump equals true, then. So set my sprite VY to -50, so that'll make it jump up, else we'll set it to 50. So once you've added in all that code, it's very important to test it because you've put in a fair amount of code there and we want to make sure it works correctly. So in your simulator, once it reloads, or click on the little arrows to reload it, press your up arrow and make sure that your character jumps. So you should be able to move left and right. What you'll actually notice is that your character, you can keep on pressing the up button and it'll keep on jumping up. So even when your character is mid-air, you can make your character jump up, which is not what we want to happen in the game. So we will be changing that, but that will happen at the moment. Okay, so let me see how everyone's doing, because that was a fair bit of code that we added. Okay, so that was step number 7. So we've 26 coders have completed step number 6 so far. So I'll just wait for my stats. Hopefully they'll update. So after this, we have step number 8, 9, 10, and 11 to do. Okay, and we've 20 minutes. Okay, so we should have enough time. Okay, so I'm just giving people time just to make sure they can finish it. Step number 7. I'm just going to refresh again. I seem to be having a few different glitches this morning. I don't know if it's my internet is just running slow today, but my broadcast dropped and something's after going wrong. Oh, that's not good. Let me try and figure out what this is. So if you just give me 1 minute, please. Okay, I'm just experiencing a few different technical difficulties again today. I'm not sure what is going wrong. It seems anything that can go wrong is going wrong today. So if you just bear with me, if you can still see the code along and the lessons just keep on going, I'm going to try and get my stream back working. Hopefully it'll just take a second, and then we'll continue on with the lesson. Okay, so here we are, back up and running. Okay. So I'll try and get the stats back up and running. And we'll get going. Okay, so we were on step number 7. So now we're going to move on to step number 8. So step number 8 is where we're going to move through the map. So this is actually just making sure that your map is okay, that you've spaced out your blocks enough, that so it is actually doable to work your way through the map. So we'll move on from that, and we'll move on to step number 9. So this is where we're only going to jump when touching the ground. Sorry, get rid of that. So as I showed you in the last step, you can actually jump mid-air, and that's not what we want, because then the game will be too easy. So what we want to do is we want to only let you jump if your sprite is touching a wall at the bottom. So what we want to do is we are going to add in an if then inside the on button be pressed, and we're going to say if my sprite hitting wall bottom, and that will make only allow us to jump when we are touching a wall. So if I jump across to arcade here, so clear this out and bring this one up. So what I want to do is I'm going to go into the logic toolbox and get an if then and put it inside the on button pressed, and get the 3 blocks that I had in there and put it inside the if, like so. And then I think is it in scene? Yes, it is in scene. So go into the scene toolbox and scroll down and look for is my sprite hitting wall left, it says, and put that inside the if then in the gap. And instead of the wall left, we want to say wall bottom. So if is my sprite hitting wall bottom, then we will allow it to jump. So then in my simulator, when I do jump, if I press it multiple times, I can only jump once. I can't jump midair. So if you want to go in and add in that code now, so you're going to get if then block from the logic toolbox, and you're going to add it inside on button on up button pressed, and then put your set jump to true, pause 750 ms, and set jump to false. Put that inside the if then, and then in the gap of the if then, in between if and then, you want to go into the scene toolbox, and near the bottom there's a block there that says is my sprite hitting wall left. Put that inside the gap, and then instead of left, click on the little white arrow and change it to bottom. So has my feed hasn't come back up, unfortunately. So I'm not sure how people are getting on in terms of that, but I'm going to assume people are still working away on that. And I'll give you a little bit more time. So that's the only jump when touching ground. So there's only 2 more steps to go. And that's, we're going to program the danger tiles and then the goal tile. So the danger tiles are like the lava or whatever you put in at the bottom. And then the goal tile is the jewel at the end. So all we're going to do is we're going to detect if our sprite touches those. Oh, there's an error in that code. That shouldn't say projectile, that should say player, but that's okay. I'll talk about that as we do it. Okay, so we'll move on and we'll do the step number 10, which is the danger tiles. So if I open up my little animation here, so we'll see here when the sprite touches the lava, it's game over. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to get a block called onSprite of kind player hit overlaps with a block at location. So I think it'd be easier actually if I show you this in Arcade. So let me zoom in. So I'm going to go into the scene toolbox. And then here there's quite a large block and it says on sprite of kind player overlaps, and you can choose a type of tile at location. So if we drag that in, and what we want to do is select here, if we click on the little white arrow, it'll show us the tiles that we've used so far. So we want to select the lava, or you select whatever your danger tile is. And then what we want to say is game, or go into the game toolbox, and there's a game over block, and we're going to put that inside. So we're going to say lose, and you can choose what effect. So click on the little plus and you can choose what effect. So I'm going to say dissolve. So once that code is loaded, I can go into my simulator and I'll make my character go in, and you can see it's game over with that dissolve effect. So if you want to go ahead and do that step now, so you're going to go into the scene toolbox and get on sprite of kind player overlaps at location and drag that in. And then you choose your danger tile. So I chose lava, you choose whatever tile you chose. And there is a mistake in the instructions, which I will update. So I do have, it does say on sprite of kind projectile. That should actually say player instead. So we will update that in the instructions. So make sure yours says player. You don't need to change it from player. And then go into the game toolbox and get a game over block and put it inside the on sprite of kind player, and click on the plus and then choose what effect you want to happen when it's game over. And then once you've put in that code, test it out in the simulator. So, you know, force your character to go into the danger tab, or so the danger tile, and make sure that that code works. Okay, my feed is still not working, but that's okay. We'll keep on going. So there's only going to be one more step. So I'll just wait though and give people a little bit more time to complete that last one. But the last step is we're going to be basically adding in the same code as the last step for the danger tile, but this time we'll choose our jewel or our goal tile. So whatever tile you chose for your goal at the end of the map, we're going to do the same thing. When your sprite overlaps with it, so when your sprite touches that type of tile, we're going to say game over, but we're going to set the toggle to win, and we'll do an effect as well. Okay, so I'll just give another little bit of time for people to do that. While we're waiting, I'm just going to make sure I have the list of people that joined today. So we have 34 coders joined us today. So we'll do a raffle at the end for the microbit. So we've got 9 minutes to go. So it'll just take us a few more minutes to do the last step, and then we will do the raffle for the microbit. Okay, so now I'm going to move on then to the final step, and that is your goal. So there's two different things you could do here. You can just kind of do game over and say win, you know, so you've completed the game, you've won the game, or you can move it on to a next level. So I'll just show you how to do the win first of all, and I'll maybe talk about how you would set it to do another level. Okay, so I'm going to go back into Arcade. So I can just duplicate this code here because it's going to be very similar. So let me zoom in a little bit. So I can just right click and go duplicate, create a copy of it. Now you'll notice that it kind of shows this ghost effect. That's because these two blocks are the exact same, and you can't have the exact same, you know, you're detecting the exact same thing twice, which, you know, would cause a problem in the code. So if I change just one of the items in here so it's different, then you'll see that it comes back as it fills in, so it doesn't have that ghost effect. So if I choose the dual tile instead, you'll see it comes in. And what we want to say is game over, but we're going to win, and we'll do a star field effect. So I'm going to test that this code works. So if I make my way, oh, I'm after killing myself. So at least I know that maybe if I do it two-handed, at least I know my map is challenging, or maybe I'm just not very good. So if I can get to the end and touch off the jewel, you see you win, and we have the effect, the star field effect. So if you want to go ahead and do that code, so you're just duplicating this, the on sprite of kind player overlaps. You're just duplicating that block. You're choosing your goal tile. So I had a jewel, so you choose whatever tile you had as your goal at the end. And then instead of game over lose, click that so it's game over win, and choose a different effect. Okay, so my stats haven't come up. I'll maybe refresh, and that might help. At least my broadcast didn't go down. It went down this morning, which was fun, so I had to refresh my broadcast. And what we will do is, so while I'm giving everyone time to finish that off, I'll just get some, I'll maybe open up Scratch, and I'll just add in some code just to do our draw. So Scratch, create. So we'll just choose a random, we'll get Scratch to do it. We'll just choose a random coder from our list. So we will think for a couple of seconds, and then we will say the winning coder is, and it's going to be a number, and I pick random number. So let me just get my list of coders. So how many do we have? We have 34. And I'll just pop them into a list so that we can see the list, and I'll do the draw. Okay. So hopefully everyone is able to follow the instructions on the steps. If I did go too fast, sorry about that, but just take your time. All the instructions and the project will remain up there, and we'll put up the video as well afterwards. And I'm going to need to look into the why the feed keeps on dropping. So we've got 34 coders. I hope you can see everyone there. So starting from Adam B all the way down to Vinya, and you each have a number. And so what we're going to do is in Scratch 1 to 34, we're going to pick a random number. So let's zoom in and see who is the winner. Okay, so, oh, I had to click on green flag. So, the winning coder is number 22. So who was number 22? Number 22 is MF83. So I'm just actually going to check if MF83 has won before, because if they have, I might give them a different. Yeah, MF83 has won before. So MF83, I will give you a separate prize, but I'd kind of like somebody new to win, you know, to win today. I think that's fair. But don't worry, I will give you a separate prize, and I will organize that too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the code again. We're going to just pick another coder. So winning number 4, and I'll make sure. So Aoife. So Aoife hasn't won yet. So Aoife will send out a microbit to you. So I'll send an email to your parents just to get where to post it to. MF83, don't worry, I will send you, I've got lots of little pieces of kit. We'll send out something to you as well, because I don't want you to feel left out because you did win it on the first run. Okay, I hope everyone enjoyed that. Sorry again, a couple of little glitches getting everything working. I think there's more and more people logging on each time. Maybe that's affecting it, so we'll need to kind of look at that just to make sure that it works for everyone, and it doesn't affect the feed that's coming through. So we're going to keep on doing these code alongs. We'll keep on doing them on Saturdays. So we'll send out emails each week with the schedule for the code alongs, and you'll see them up on the site. And also, if you want to check out the Codeverse, if you haven't checked it out already, it's a new section that we added into our site, and it just has different, it'll show different projects that different users and coders have shared, and you can check them out, you can react and like them and so on, you can follow each other. So we're going to add in a few little extra things into that just to kind of make it a little bit more fun as we learn a bit more about coding. So hope you enjoyed today. Have a good rest of the day, and we'll see you next week. Bye.